wonder if anybody's ever old enough to remember Sesame Street. Kids programme used to go on in the 70s when I was growing up. And every week they used to come to you and they used to say at the end of it, this week's programme is being brought to you by the letter, whatever, and the number, whatever. And I wondered, if we were doing that with AutoEV, what would the letter be? Well, it's probably going to be I, because I seems to have this kind of iconic connotation when it comes to the car. I mean, think about it. When you add an I onto something, it suggests something a bit more special, doesn't it? You think about it. You had the XR3, but then it became the XR3i. A GT was one thing, but when it became a GTI, it became something else. And even without cars, iPod, iPhone, iPad, it all signified something quite special. But of course there are other iconic letters in the car world, aren't there? You think about it, there's GT, GT3, GT2, RS, RSR. Well, what happens if you put two of them together, likes of I and M? Well, does that give us something really special? Because according to BMW, it does. Welcome to the very first electric M car, and welcome to AutoEV. Now, before we go on to this week's road test of the new BMW i4 M50, it's obviously that time when I ask you to do a little bit of the housekeeping rules, which is liking the videos, subscribing to the channel and pressing the little bell button down below to receive notification of when the next video goes live. If you're already a subscriber, thank you for your continued support, and if you're not, please consider becoming one, because by doing so it does help the channel grow and allow us to bring you great content like this. Let's talk about the BMW 3 Series for a moment, because since its launch in the 1970s, that has been the benchmark sports saloon by which all others were judged. Through the 70s and into the 80s, those iconic kind of yuppie years, if you like, where we first saw the M badge being applied to the rump of one and dominating DTM racing and obviously British touring cars with the M3. And of course others followed suit. Mercedes, AMG product, Audi S, RS4, to name but just two. But as we're moving towards electrification, do we still get those, are we still going to be able to have those iconic sports saloons? Well, Tesla have obviously come out with the Model 3 and said yes, Polestar have followed suit, but it's taken a little while for BMW to come along with an i product that sits in that bracket. Well, they have now with the new i4, and they're going one further, because they're saying that this car isn't, as I say, just an M badge, it's a proper M car. Is it? Well, let's stick it through the AutoEV road test and find out. So, let's start with its styling, which is usually a point of controversy for any modern BMW. But crucially, does it look like an M car? Well, yeah, I think it does in places. I mean, it is essentially an electric 4 Series Grand Coupe with electric underpinnings and high power, but we'll get onto that a little bit later. But in terms of its looks, that's pretty much what we're looking at here. Now, I've never been a big fan of these kind of matte paint finishes. This is one of the kind of frozen blue matte finishes that they do. But the one thing I will say is what it does do is it does kind of highlight a lot of these kind of contours on the bonnet and give them a little bit more kind of interest. Of course, the controversial aspect was the big kind of rabbit's teeth front grille, the double kidney, that BMW then applied to the 4 Series Coupe. But obviously, being an I car, it's filled in. This isn't a grille. There's a little bit cooling down at the bottom there, but that's about it. The top bit here is actually filled in. Not so sure of this M badge stuck on, and the number plate, well, I suppose it does break up the expanse of the grille. But there's some nice, as I say, swage lines here. I like the headlights. Of course, they're tinged with blue because it's an electric car, and BMW seem to think everything that's got electric power has to have a blue bit to it. So there it is. There's some cooling around the side with these carbon vents there. All cooling down at the bottom, but yeah, it's not quite as in your face. There's a little bit of a Q car about it, which in my view kind of harked back to the original M5, the E28, which looked kind of standard but actually had its light under its really subtle bushel. So from that point of view, yeah, it's getting there. Now around the side you can really see that 4-door coupe style profile that's always very popular with BMW and Audi owners these days. I wonder what it'd be like more of the 4-door saloon, as I say, like a 3 Series. Not quite as rakish, but might have been a bit more like the Q car that I was talking about earlier. Anyway, one thing I will say that the M version doesn't get, should say, that the i4 does, and I'm really pleased about, is a blue kind of flash down the side there. I just don't get this whole, if we're going to go electric, why stand out about it? Why make it different? Why appear everything else? Why not just make it like a standard M car would look like? And that's effectively what BMW have done here, and I'm quite pleased about that. You get the flush door handles, which are nice. This little kind of crease line that runs from the front wing then disappears through the door to reappear at the kind of back shoulder, the back hip. It's like extended wheel arches, which are nice. This car's sitting on 20-inch multi-spoke alloy wheels, which are particularly nice as well. And as I say, you've got the addenda that you'd be used to, such as the carbon mirror with its kind of double prong airflow, and then this rakish kind of flow back into with a nice carbon rear spoiler. Like I say, nice carbon rear boot spoiler on the vehicle, where obviously you get exhaust on any other M car. It's just diffusers now. Your nice M50 badge there, but again, just that kind of blue tinge around the BMW badge is all that's giving the game away that this is an electric one, along with the little I badge there. Handsome, yeah, let's go with that rather than stunning or beautiful. How does practicality fit into the car? Well, it's okay actually. It's 470 litres, which is pretty ample actually, and of course you've got your split rear seat as well that splits 3 ways, obviously with a little load through. There's a little bit of underfloor storage, though not much in fairness. This one's got the big Harman Kardon audio system in it there, but the charging cable bags will fit neatly into these kind of side pockets here, and you've got your rigid load cover as well. So yeah, it's okay, it's not bad. There's probably enough in there that you'd want for like a trip to Le Mans or something like that. You'd certainly be more than adequate, I would say. So how do we fare in the rear of the car? Well, it's okay, it's fine. I've got the seat set up for myself. As you know, I'm 5'7", 5'8", and I can fit behind myself reasonably well. There's some leg room. Headroom started to get a little bit tight. I would think if you were over 6 foot, you would struggle a little bit behind even somebody of my height driving. You're certainly going to feel a little bit more cramped. You don't sit as high as you do in something like the Polestar 2 with that kind of stadium seating, and in this car we don't have the kind of big glass roof like you get in a Tesla, so it does feel a little bit more enclosed in here. The Polestar and the Tesla just feel that a little bit more airy. There's certainly not really enough for 3 abreast, I would suggest, because of this high floor. It's not a flat floor in this car because obviously it's based on piston engine car underpinnings like the 4 Series Grand Coupe, so you've got this transmission tunnel to put with. The seats themselves are actually quite comfortable though, in fairness, but as I say, certainly a centre person isn't going to be possible really in here unless they are of the smaller variety. Usual BMW fare, the ISOFIX points are nice and easy to get to with these covers. You've got a sort of armrest, pops down here with the cup holders in it. As I say, there's a sort of like a little bit of load through facility if you've got sort of longer items, as skis or fishing rods or whatever. And as I say, it's the actual ambience itself is okay. There's no seat pockets on the back of this one. There is 2 USB-C charging ports, however, and we do get rear digital climate control in this car as well. The door bins, they're all right. They'll take a water bottle, and they've managed to get my notebook in it, but I'd say the Tesla and the Polestar offer slightly more accommodation in the back and certainly feel bigger in the back than this car does. So what about up front? How does it feel up front? Well, it does feel different to the 4 Series because you've got this new curved screen that BMW do that we saw on the iX as well, but it's kind of mounted onto a standard kind of car dashboard. It's not quite as futuristic as the i3 and the iX, but that's, you know, maybe not such a bad thing in some respects. Maybe some people might be put off with that. Now let's remember, turn those wipers off. Let's remember the iX3, BMW's other i product, as we said with that video, it's not designed to scare people away. It's designed to be a car that gets people who would normally have bought petrol or diesel cars into electric cars. And you kind of get the same feeling with the i4. It's not designed to be too radical. It's designed to say, like, say, well, look, you know, we know you're used to a 3 Series or a 4 Series. Why don't you try this instead? And therefore, it just gives you enough technology that feels slightly different and a bit more ahead of the game without scaring you off too much. What is important is how how usable it all is, and that is to say, it is really usable. I really do like BMW's sort of like infotainment system, the way the screens work and how it all clicks together. Of course, you've got your familiar iDrive controller down here. It's nice and easy with the shortcut buttons that have got the kind of haptic feedback as well. It's all nice and easy, and once you've got used to it, as I say, you know where everything is, and it's just simple to use, nice and easy. You know, as I say, the shortcut buttons, depending what you want, whether you go for media, telephone, navigation or not. You've got standard kind of transmission lever, if you like, here that brings us back from reverse, neutral and drive, and also activates the brake regeneration, which we'll show you later. And then there's the drive select buttons down here, the Eco Pro, Comfort and Sport, the stop start, and then some of the parking ones here, and the DSC control. You've got physical buttons in terms of the volume control for the audio system and for track selection here, and a couple of shortcut buttons on the climate system for maximum defrost to the front screen and rear screen. If you want to actual climate control, however, you go into this and use the screen itself. But you know, as I say, it all has that haptic feedback, so it clicks once you've used it. So it's quite nice that way. The wheel itself, well, it's usual BMW M these days, which is to say a little bit too thick for my liking. It's nice to hold in terms of its actual shape, but I just feel the rim's just a little bit too thick for me. The driver display here is very, very good. There's nothing too you know, ambiguous here. You're going to not get used to the weird kind of digital speed readout on the left, but the centre one as well to give you your actual speed, and then obviously the power kind of meter at the side, which would be a sort of like a rev counter, if you like. But all the information's along the bottom, nice and easy to read. So range left, outside temperature, what your transmission is, if there's people in the car, the time, and your battery percentage left. Standard fare BMW column stocks as well, so indicators, wipers, nice and easy to use. Your light switch down by your right knee, again, you're not going to be put off by any of this if you've come from a 3 Series or a 4 Series. Buttons on the steering wheel, again, nice and easy. Volume control, track selection, or your cruise control on this side, and a heated seat button in the centre there. There's good storage. We've got the centre kind of cubby here. We've got enough room for a couple of water bottles. There's a wireless charging pad in there as well. I've got some centre storage in there with some USB ports. There's another one there. Not quite as deep as you'd want, maybe, in some respects. The seats themselves, well, they're M seats, so they do hold you really well. They've got nice shoulder support here. They feel well. They hold you in the right places, and it's nice, and they're electrically adjustable as well with memory positioning. As I say, it's not radical like the i3 and the iX, but you get the impression that that's not what they set out to do, that they wanted to more of that kind of iX3 kind of scenario where they're sort of like saying, don't be scared about going electric, because it all sort of looks like what you're used to in our other cars. So yeah, it's not as wow as the Tesla or the Polestar in terms of its minimalism. It looks like a normal BMW, but it looks like the next step on from BMW, if that makes sense. And I do like this big screen up here, so I have to say that is a big plus point. What I will say is the build quality is exactly as you'd expect to find. Everything in here just feels like it's going to last an absolute lifetime. The use of materials is nice. The leather on the seat, you know, okay, there's glossy carbons, maybe fake, I'm not sure, but it feels nice. The silvery plastic, I'm pleased that there's not too many of the silver plastic buttons, which I've seen on some of the other BMW products of late. They've gone back to that kind of more kind of black plastic, so nothing's too kind of garish and glary on your face. But on the whole, a good effort. Love this screen. Would just like to have seen a little bit more of a kind of radical departure for my like. Now, I've been talking about the i4 like it's just available in this one variant, this M car variant, but it's not. You can have it with a slightly smaller battery with slightly lower power, and that's the eDrive 40. Now, that comes with an 81.5 kilowatt hour battery, which should see a WLTP range of up to 316 miles. This car has an 83.9 kilowatt hour battery, so just slightly bigger, but the range increases on the WLTP cycle to 360 miles. But both cars will take charging speeds of up to 200 kilowatts, and both have a very similar sort of rate of charge in terms of the speed. The 10 to 80% charge will happen from a 200 kilowatt charger in 31 minutes. If it's the more likely 100 kilowatt charger you stumble across, that's going to be 41 minutes. Obviously, from a 7 kilowatt wall box, it's going to be just overnight. Now, If you want your i4 without all the M gubbins, then you're going to have to make do with a paltry 340 brake horsepower, and that's delivered through a single motor mounted at the rear on the standard eDrive 40. However, this is the M50, and as I say, we're out today to decide whether or not this is a proper M car. Now that means more horsepower, 544 brake horsepower to be precise, and that is delivered to all four wheels via two motors, one at the rear, one at the front, and that drops the 0 to 60 time to, well, not unsubstantial 3.9 seconds, which is blisteringly fast these days. Absolutely blisteringly fast. But to drive normally, and there's different driver settings which I'll go to in a second, which I'll get into in a second, but I'm pottering around a little local town down in Surrey, and it's not recalcitrant, it's quite easy to drive, it's quite happy just to sort of like meander through the town, it's not thumping my back, it's quite nice. Which kind of then begs the question, is it a proper M car, as I say? Because I always get the feeling with M cars that they're always sort of like pent up, they're ready to just go, and that doesn't really matter which one it's been. Now, I used to have a Z3M Roadster years ago, and I used to love that car, the S50 engined one, not the higher revving S54, but it always felt that it wasn't happy unless you're absolutely taking it by the scruff of the neck and giving it some. And I seem to remember the same with the E46 M3s. They really got on song when you were absolutely tanking them. And that to me is a proper M car in some respects. Is it just a little bit too sanitised, this one? Well, I'm not really quite sure. But away from that, before we get out of town, and I'll do a little bit more performance and delve into that, the chassis dynamics a little bit better. What I will say is its ease of use is, well, nothing wrong with it at all. It's quite happy to pot it on. The steering's got a nice feel to it. As I say, I don't particularly like these thick steering wheels that BMW fit, but that's my personal opinion. Some people like them, it's not my kind of bag. But actually, the steering itself is nice. Suspension is very compliant. The suspension is very good. Let's say it's on 20-inch alloys, this car, and yet you wouldn't really feel it through some of these more kind of heavily pockmarked roads. It's certainly got better composure than the likes of the Tesla Model 3 on these roads. It feels quite quiet as well. There's a relative high level of refinement that you expect from a BMW these days, which is quite nice. The seats hold you well. You feel that you're always in control of the car. There's good driving position, reasonably good visibility, even out the rear screen with that kind of heavily raked rear screen. Doesn't feel like it's out of the way. It feels like it's nice and it's easy to see out of. These M mirrors on the side, the kind of sticky out two-prong mirrors, they're all right. They've got good visibility out the back. So yeah, it's kind of shaping up to feel like, why would you buy the M version? Why would you not just stick to the standard i4? Because it will do all of this, and as I say, it's not exactly a slow car with over 300 brake horsepower. Okay, you don't have the same level of grip because it's a single motor, but it's a bit more typical BMW because it's rear drive. So I'm starting to wonder, yeah, is this really worth the money, and should it really have the M badge on it? Let's get out of town and let's see what it's like there. Okay, so now we're sort of getting out of the town limits. What does the car actually feel like? Well, it certainly feels like it's got performance credentials. There's nothing there to suggest otherwise. There's a nice balance of power between the two axles. There's a huge level of grip, as you'd expect from a dual motor car, certainly one wearing these Pirelli P0 tyres as well. And today's a particularly kind of horrible, kind of greasy kind of December day, so yeah, if it's going to do well, this is the kind of day it would do well on in terms of its grip. So it certainly feels like there is performance potential there. Now, we're driving the car, as I say, in the normal mode, and like most of these cars, there is obviously the different modes that you can put the car through. So I pitch it into the bend in normal mode. There's very little body roll, there's a little bit, You just feel that the front end wash is a little bit wide as you apply power mid-bend, but it certainly picks up and goes well. We can dial it back down here. We can go to Eco Pro, and as usual, that's the, you know, everything kind of switches off and it starts to eke out the very, very last bits of range and miles for you. But it's the sport button. Well, that's the one that sort of changes things quite a bit. Now I press that, and it comes up here and it says Sport Boost. I don't know what it boosts, but I'm in Sport Boost mode, and Sport Individual. And you can configure the individual, so you can go into it, and obviously depending what you want to do, you can configure it exactly how you want it. So we can take the damping down from Sport, we can take it into Comfort. Let's leave that in Sport. We can go into the steering and we can slacken that off and make it more comfort orientated, but we'll keep it in Sport. Same with the drivetrain. Here we go. And we press that now, and I've got Comfort, Sport, Sport Boost. Let's pop that into Sport Boost, or you can then reset everything to standard. So you can really set the car up how you want it. So it's very similar to some of those other M cars where you can configure it and then you've got that M button on the steering wheel, which is quite nice. And at this point, everything starts to come alive a bit more, and the car feels much more alive for you. It's starting to feel a bit more like an M car. It's starting to feel a bit more like you would expect it to be. Which is to say, you know, fast and dynamic. And it certainly is. But, and there is a but, there's something lacking. There's something a little bit sterile, a little bit anodyne about it, and I can't quite put my finger on it. It is biblically fast. It is absolutely biblically fast. You could not want anything faster than this. I mean, not to 60s, I say, in under 4 seconds. Who on earth would want a car faster than that? And obviously the more you use the performance, the more it will affect the range, but it is a performance car, so you expect that. You would expect that in an internal combustion engine car, it would use more fuel. Of course it would. But as I say, there's just something a bit lacking. There's an interaction that's not quite there. And I'm not sure whether or not that's BMW's fault or whether that's an electric car's fault. Because as I say, when you look at things like the Mini Electric, that's an engaging car to drive. And the Porsche Taycan, that's an engaging car to drive, even though it's electric. And this is good. This is very good. But as I say, it's that last little bit. And maybe, just maybe, I'm hanging too much on this being a proper M car. And in reality, what it is an M Sport. But by Jove, it's fast. I mean, really fast. Now, let's talk about some other little ancillaries that we need to chat about. The brakes. The brakes are very good. Brakes are excellent. There's a nice interaction. As soon as you press the pedal, poof, it bites. That's really good. I like that. Now, the brakes at the moment are set in the sort of like normal mode. You can bring it across, the transmission lever across into the B mode, which then gives us a form of brake regeneration. And as you come off, it starts to slow the car down. It will also use the radar guided cruise control at front as well to slow the car down. If the car in front is slowing too fast, it'll apply more brakes as well. So that's good, I like that. But as I say, the actual interaction with the brakes is very, very good. As I mentioned, the steering is good. In fact, it's better than good. It's really good. I like it. Gosh, see, look, there's an M2 competition in front of me. And as much as I love EVs, there's a side of me that kind of thinks that might be the better car. But God, there's a lot of grip in this car. Anyway, where was it? Oh yes, other things. Yeah, the steering's excellent. I like it. I like it a lot. There's not a lot of body roll in the car either, and there's a compliancy to the suspension, even in this sport setting, where it would just, a Tesla owner wouldn't even know where to look. It's so good. I don't know what it is. Maybe I just need to spend a bit more time with it. Maybe I just need to really put down a proper drive in this car to see whether or not I'm just not delving deep enough. But as I say, I think it's better off being badged as an M Sport rather than an M. Now the i4 range kicks off with the model I spoke about earlier, the eDrive 40, and that comes in starting price of £51,905, which is correct at time of filming. Now you can have that in two trim guises, either the Sport or the M Sport. But if it's the full-blown M you want the M50 like the one we have here, then BMW are going to relieve you of £64,000 for that car, plus of course any options that you might want to tick on your way out the showroom. So what other cars are you going to be looking at if you're considering the BMW i4? Well, of course it's the usual suspects, isn't it? The Tesla Model 3 and the Polestar 2. And whilst both of those cars do offer a performance variant, I'm not sure they're quite as focused as a proper full-blown M car that BMW are offering. And does this pave the way for more electric performance variants from manufacturers that we're more likely to see competing with BMW? Audi with maybe an RS badged version of the next A4 if it goes electric. Mercedes, is there going to be an AMG electric? Who knows? What I will say, however, is just bear in mind at the top of this range, once you start adding in some extras, you are getting tantalisingly close to the Porsche Taycan. So here's what we like and what we don't like about the new BMW i4 M50. We like its good range and efficiency, its performance, its typical BMW build quality, and its familiarity. We're not so sure about its divisive looks. It's a little too similar to the piston engine 4 Series Grand Coupe. It can get expensive with options, and for an M car from BMW, should it just be a little bit more radical than it is? When people sometimes ask me, of all the cars I've owned, which one I would have back in a heartbeat, my answer is always the same. It was my BMW Z3 M Roadster that I used to own. I absolutely loved that car, and I wish I had never sold it, because what it was to me was the essence of what the M department really was at BMW. They took something that was quite humdrum and ordinary, like just a little Z3, and turned it into something really, really special. And for me, that's what they've always had the ability to do. No matter what the base model they started with, they were always able to turn it into something even better, whether that was the E36 M3 or the E46 3 Series, and to making it into the M3, especially the CSL, and of course all of the M5s. But the question that we set out right at the start of this video is this a proper M car? Have BMW actually done it? Have they electrified a proper M car? Well, it has the performance and it has a lot of the dynamics that you'd look for in an M car. Is it going to set any new benchmarks like M cars really did back in the past? And I'm not sure it really does. I think they've played this one a little bit safe, if I'm honest with you. As I say, there's a lot of performance and a huge amount of dynamics to thrill you in the car, but it's just lacking that little bit of specialness that an M car usually has. Perhaps I need to spend a little bit more time with it. Perhaps, you know, the short time I've had with the car isn't going to be enough, and a longer drive and a more demanding route is probably going to seal the deal for me. But for now, all I'm going to say is this: it's good. It's not great. Thank you for watching AutoEV. As always, please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel and press the little bell button down below so you're notified of when our next video goes live. By doing so, you are helping us stay independent and helping us to create great content for you. Remember, we're on all social media as well, so Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn and Instagram. So if you will, please go and give us a like there, because every little bit helps us. And if you haven't been there, please head over to autoev.co.uk, where our road test review library is just there waiting for you. Thank you again. I'll see you soon. So, you've watched our video. It's now my job to tell you to like and subscribe and press the little bell button to receive notification of when our next video is uploaded.